What's up, everybody? So, um, let's get this started. All right, um, yeah, that's working. Okay, um, today, what we're going to go over is this. So, just I have the live chat brought up on my phone, so I'll keep that open. If you have any questions, just ask in the chat, and I will check that from time to time. Um, Otherwise, the this lecture is up on Blackboard along with two files. This one that says workfam.php and the other one says index.php. We will take a look at those later on. Um, but we're going to be going over uh, MySQL, just starting to learn the basics of handling databases. Um, so that you can pull data from your database and show it on the front end of your website, which is what you have to do for your assignment. So we're going to start from scratch, from the ground up, so that we can, start from zero. So when it comes to, like it says here, when it comes to HTML and PHP, the beauty about it is that we can enter some content into a database and we can pull it up and interact with it, right? We can push data to the database, we can pull it back from the database and put it on the front end of any website or web interface. This is how anytime you see a website that's working with WordPress, Joomla, any open source content management system, that's how it works. When you go on Instagram or you go on Facebook, you go on any social media site, that is how it works. There is a database that is stored on a server, and data is saved into that database and then later retrieved. And it is done so using PHP or ASP, some server-side code that will handle the data flow. Now, obviously, we're going to scale this down. We're not obviously not going to build an entire content management system or anything like that. We're going to look at it from a very basic point of view. But you may already know this, but just in case there are any people that don't understand this yet, um, there is a flow of data, right? Now that data can either start on the client side or it can start on the server side, right, or the database side. But either way, there's a flow of data. Now, in the example here that I wrote here, we can look at this in the case of the user, the data flow starting on the user side, right? That would look like somebody goes to some website somewhere, um, and there's a form that's on the front end of the website, and the user would interact with that form. They would put some data, like first name, last name, they'd fill out all this form information, and once they would press the send button or the enter or submit button, whatever the button is labeled as, that data will have to go somewhere, right? Now, when that data is going somewhere, in most cases, it's going to be on an encrypted website. So it'll be running, if the website is running the HTTPS protocol, then that data is going to be encrypted and sent to the server via the internet. Um, over port 443. Now, I've talked about this before, just a quick uh, refresher. Um, the port is like, this is the port that it arrives to the server at, so that the server knows where this data is supposed to go. It's just like any other port. You think of like a real port on land from sea, right? Certain ships may go to one port and certain ships may go to another port. It's the same thing. So we're going to encrypt that data and send it over the internet, send it to the server. The server will have a file on it, and will tell this, whichever web page that is that the form is on, will tell the server which file to send this data to, right? So it might be called handler.php or something like that. Um, you'll just be pointing to a file the same way you point to like any other file, like same way you point to your CSS file. It'll be linked in the form tag, and this will tell the form what to do and where to send it. It'll send the data to that file, and that file will have some PHP written on it instructing the computer what to do with the data that was sent, right? So okay, we'll take this data and like send it all to this email address, for example. And if that's the case, then that data will get sent off to that email address, right? Or the PHP file may say, okay, take this data and insert it into this particular table, right? So, take this data, insert it into this table, take that data, and insert it here, sort of, so on and so forth, right? Sorry, I meant to say this table into this column on the table, right? And then take another piece of data, insert it into a different column on some particular table, and so on, right? So once that is done, then the server will take the data and send it off to the database and save it within the database, right? Once it's stored in the database, then the user can now usually retrieve it somewhere else if you allow them to, right? Or maybe it gets displayed somewhere, or whatever the case, whatever you need to do with the data, you can do that, from it being in its location in the database's table, right? And that's basically how it works, right? Now, again, this could work the opposite way, where the data starting at the database can be pulled from the database via some PHP file, and then sent over the internet and then displayed on the client side, right? Like when they look at their user profile or something like that. It's the same thing, just going in the opposite direction. Okay. Now, to do this, obviously, you're going to have to create a MySQL database. Now, um, in previous classes, we've been looking at XAMPP, but we're not going to use that because, like, you can make databases on here, um, and you can interact with them. But as you know, if you're using this isn't accessible via the web. Like, we need to be doing this on a actual web server so that we can make things that are, published on the actual web, right? So we're gonna focus on that. Now, there are a lot of nuances and quirks about this, and I'll try to remember to cover them all. So, um, when we're going to do this, we're going to be using certain tools, and we're going to take a look at them. Now, if you are using Infinity Free, which I think most of you probably are, And there's going to be, usually the tools are always the same. Sorry for the truck passing by, making all the noise. But usually the tools are the same. Sometimes they're a little bit different. Sometimes they're the same, but they're a little bit different. And I will try to again remember to cover all the little nuances about that. But one of the tools we're going to be using is called PHP-MyAdmin. PHP-MyAdmin is basically like an industry standard tool. Like you'll find it on like any Apache server, like regular Linux servers. You're gonna find the PHP-MyAdmin in most cases, right? Um, so this PHP-MyAdmin uh, tool is what we can use to interact with the database directly, and we're going to take a look at it more in depth. Um, but you can use it to do anything you need to do with an SQL database. You can like make new tables. You can manipulate tables. You can add data to the table. You can use it to generate MySQL code. You can write MySQL code right there in the UI. So that's basically what it is. Now, do you need to become a wizard with this tool? Or do you even need to become a wizard in general with MySQL and with MySQL databases? Not necessarily. It just really depends on like what you want to do. Like, you know, what capacity are you going to be uh, like what capacity are you going to be working with a back end? Are you going to be like a back end dev? Are you going to be a full stack dev? Are you going to be a front end dev? All this is going to dictate um, how heavily you'll be working with tools like this. But you don't have to become like a whiz. You know, let's say hypothetical situation. You you wanted to be a graphic designer or something. Well, as long as you just kind of know your way around these things, then that's cool. You know, let's say you were going to work with WordPress or something like that predominantly. Well, yeah, and you're going to want to know your way around this tool a little bit more, but you still don't necessarily have to be a whiz with it because when you install WordPress or any content management system, it builds the database for you. You may have to go in and like do some things manually here and there, um, but are you going to be working with it like digging within the database like on a daily basis? Me, I don't know. Depends, but probably not, right? So, for the most part, you just want to learn your way around these things. cPanel is another thing that we're going to be taking a look at as well. And this is another tool. PHP-MyAdmin is found within cPanel. cPanel, all it is the your web host's, you know, administration panel. You're definitely going to want to learn your way around cPanel if you don't already, because every web host will have a cPanel, and if they don't have like legit cPanel, they may have another thing similar, like Plesk or something like that. A lot of times, what you'll see is it'll be cPanel, but it'll just be rebranded, like to like the web hosting's brand, but it is actually cPanel. So make sure you learn your way around it. Now, and like it says here, cPanel is industry standard. Most places are going to run it. And if they, like I said earlier, I don't need to reiterate, but some people might just be running a skinned version, like a branded version of it. So yes, again, you definitely want to learn your way around this. Now, this is where we're going to start creating our database. So if you're running Infinity Free, or if you have whatever web hosting you're running, go log in, and you're going to go to the control panel, which is cPanel. And see, this one is just rebranded. right? This is cPanel. It's just reskinned to have Infinity Free's logo. But anyway, this may vary because different hosts are configured differently. So what I show you today may vary depending on your, you know, your web host, but it just is what it is. It's just one of those things. So when we first start doing this, um, we're going to want to go to the MySQL databases link here. Now, the way that Infinity Free is set up, it's set up a little bit differently than like my actual web host. It's set up a little bit differently, but the way that you do it here in Infinity Free, you create a database. So like you could say create a new database, whatever, just give it some name, and then you create the database. Once you create the database, Infinity Free sort of assigns things to it, right? Like it assigns the details. On other web hosts, you will have an extra step. That extra step would be down here. This is what I mean when I say that different hosts are configured differently. You just kind of, and again, it is just one of those things that you learn to deal with. Because if you get it, let's say that you get used to doing it a certain way on your web hosting server, then you get a client or you get some job somewhere, and then they have a different web host. It might be a little bit different, right? But you just get used to it. So other web hosts might have a different step underneath here, and the different step might say like create user, and then underneath there they might have a step where it says like add user to database, right? Um, if you have that on your web hosting, then what you're going to have to do is after you create the database, you're going to have to either assign an existing user to the new database that you made, or alternatively make another new user. And this is just a database user, mind you. Um, so like this is specifically for the database, not for FTP or anything else. You could create a new database user and then assign that database user to the new database that you just made. After you do that, you will have to assign privileges to that database user, or else by default they don't have any privileges, right? So let me see if I can find a cPanel demo, just so I can show you what I'm talking about. Okay, yeah. So let's see, MySQL databases. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. So let's say you create a database, new DB, create the database, but it's disabled in demo mode, so whatever, it won't work. But anyway, I can still show you what I was talking about. You create a new database. The database would show up here, and then you can do other things like modify the database, repair the database. This is more, not really advanced, but getting into something that would better be discussed in another class. So we'll skip this for now. Once you create the database, it would be here. And you can see this one has MySQL users, and it'll say add user, where you could add a new user and give it a password, and then put the password twice to make sure it's a good password. It matches, you create the user, then you can assign, and it looks like people have been making users on here. These are all like hacked names. So let's go back and see. Um, if we were to, and it doesn't have this because it's probably disabled now, but there would be a thing where we could assign the user to any specific database, which there could be a whole list of them here. There could be a bunch of different databases here, right? Not just one. Um, Now, just so that you understand, if you were to install like a WordPress blog or like a WordPress website on this web hosting, there would only be one. You could do that. It only needs one database for it to work. Okay, so once you install WordPress, or first before you install WordPress, you would have to create a database that it could install onto, but you only need the one database. Then if you wanted to do some other stuff like on the side or outside of that WordPress installation, you could do that just by creating a different database and having a totally separate database, right? So that's how you do that. Okay. Now, it's important that this part is important because on other web hosts, it's going to work more like this. Infinity Free is a really, really basic sort of hosting environment. So it just is what it is, right? So anyway, Infinity Free, you can create the new database. And once you do, then it'll be created. And the username and the password will already be created for you. Now, here, it'll tell you MySQL hostname, password, which will be omitted, the username, and then the database name. This information is going to be important. Alternatively, in Infinity Free, we can get the information for these things here as well. Like, MySQL username, the password, which will be omitted. You could just show hide it there. The SQL host name, which doesn't match here. And see, these things are the little quirks that you have to sort of pay attention to and understand because, see, here MySQL hostname is sql306.infinityfree.com, but over here, the MySQL hostname is this. Now, maybe they both work. Maybe that's just the way that the web host is configured. Maybe it's configured so that they just both work. Maybe we try one and it doesn't connect properly, and then we try the other one and it connects properly. Who knows, right? These things happen where you'll try something, like you'll try to connect and it doesn't work, and then you try something else and it does work. It's just part of the game. It just is what it is, right? But regardless, the host will give you the information that you need. So this is all the information that we need to connect to this database, and the port and so on, right? So there's that. Now, the database is created, so we could go to the next thing, which is a phpMyAdmin. So we created the database, new DB, and we can go into it. Now, I have this school DB. I'm just going to go into that one. Or actually, no. I'll go into the new DB. So we'll go into the new DB, and this will load up the phpMyAdmin. So let's just go step by step. So, like it says here, depending on the server configuration, you can enter the phpMyAdmin and you're going to see this particular interface. Now, like I said before, Infinity Free's interface is like really, really, really basic. There's a lot of things that they don't have on here that you usually would see. And I do have an example of that here. Okay. So look at the difference between this, which is what you're going to see again in Infinity Free, and this, which you would see more like so on a paid web hosting plan, right? There's a lot more going on. Um, and I do want you to be used to seeing this because this is what you're probably going to see. So when you log in, usually there's the sidebar, and the sidebar will show you all of your databases that you may have. Okay, so if you just had one, then there would just be the one in there. If you had 10 different databases that you created in your cPanel, then you'll see them all in here, right? And you could just click on one, and then you would be on that database. Okay. Infinity Free does not have um, that sidebar, which kind of sucks, but it just is what it is. They just don't have it. They don't have it. Um, Another thing you're going to see on other web hosting PHPMyAdmins is on the right side, you're going to see a bunch of boxes, and they're going to have like different information, like, um, you know, just information about the server, information about the database, and so on. I know this part is kind of chopped off here. I just grabbed this as just a random example that I just Googled and pasted. But if this was scrolled up, it would say uh, like database info or whatever. And then you have all the different things about the database um, that, that, particularly for that database and web server information and so on, right? So um, that is something that you should know the difference. Like when you see this, you know, you'll know what you're looking at. Another thing to note is at the top, you can see it here, you can see it here. Um, it'll say server, and it'll tell you like what the name of the SQL server is, and it may have a breadcrumb. Like if you clicked on one of the databases, then it'll say server, and then database, and then table within the database, and so on. That is just telling you where you are. Um, then there's going to be these tabs at the top, which we will talk about in a minute. And this little arrow button here, which will hide the sidebar when you click it. Anything else? I think that's it. Oh, and this bottom console will tell you what's going on if and when anything is going on. Like if you're going to run a query or whatever, it'll show you the code down here. Now, this PHPMyAdmin, this what we're seeing here, and this what we're seeing here, if you're logged into your Infinity Free, this is the, like, here, no, here, the theme, right? This, when I change it to the original theme, um, this is like the older theme of PHPMyAdmin. So sometimes you may see this. Just don't freak out if you do see this. It's the same thing. It's just a little bit older of a design. That's all. So the old design, new design. Um, in the old design, just something another little quirk. And see how the sidebar was there for a second, then it disappeared. Infinity Free. I don't know if it's my browser. I don't think it is. But like the sidebar was there and then it just disappeared. It's like they disabled it. I don't know why, but it's whatever. But yeah, that's it. Now, Um, okay, so yeah, so now we can look at the tabs one by one. We may not necessarily go through all of them, but we will go through the ones that you for sure need to know. Now, there's another little quirk about Infinity Free that, like, the see, look here. Let me see if I can show you. And this is something that I just noticed about Infinity Free. When I click the admin again, it puts me into the database. See, database new DB, which is on this particular server. Where I was over here, I was there. Let me go back and back until I get to where I entered. Okay, here. Damn it. Okay, I'll do it again. Oops. Whoops. No, wrong button. Okay, here. See, watch. I'm in the database, right? I clicked structure, I think it was, or no? What did I click on? I clicked the server. So I clicked the server and went out of my database, right? Because remember, when I clicked this PHP my admin button, it put me into the server and into this database. When I click this now, the server, it brings me out of the database. And then it's like it doesn't have the sidebar, and the sidebar is where you would use to go back into the damn database. It says here, but this is where you're supposed to create databases. So all I'm trying to show you is that the way that the Infinity Free is configured, where it doesn't have the sidebar. I don't know again if it's just my browser that is not showing it or if they have it disabled, but for whatever reason, the navigation sucks on here. So just keep that in mind. So in here, I'm in my database, as we can see here, right? And because I'm in my database, I can create a table. Whereas over here, the one where I was outside of the database, I can create a new database, right? But it doesn't have a thing to create table. And the way, again, that in Infinity Free is configured, you're supposed to create a database out in your cPanel, out here, not in phpMyAdmin. I'm showing you this just in case you're working in Infinity Free and you don't end up making this mistake and like coming out of the database and then like being confused and not knowing why you can't do whatever you're trying to do. Then you want to break your computer, right? So just keep that in mind. So here, and I'm going to close these tabs so we don't need them anymore. So in here, where I'm in the database, I'm in my new DB that I created, right? Out here, I'm in my new DB, okay? So on the server, in my database, I can now create a table, okay? So in the example of that's uploaded on the example that I uploaded on Blackboard, the table's name was personnel, which has a typo in it, which I highlighted the typo in the code, but it's whatever. So we can create a table. You can name it whatever you want. The table name is going to be, whatever the table is for, obviously. List of workers or worker list or something like that, whatever the case may be, list of cars, whatever, okay, product list. We're going to create just the table for whatever we need. Now, the number of columns in the example that we use here, um, we want a first name, a last name, a position, and a phone number. And just to, before we continue on, just so you know, that's the databases tab. Now we're in the structure tab, and obviously creating a table. So we want 4 pieces of data that we're going to collect, but we really want 5 pieces of data because we really should have an ID, and the ID is like it's like just a unique identifier for each thing. You know what I mean? For each entry. So for like each person, they would have their own ID. It would start with 1 and then go up, you know, for as many people that get entered into this database sort of thing, so that we can use that ID as their unique identifier instead of their name, right? So we want to have 5 columns, and then we can go ahead and create the table. Now, what's happening in, well, before this table, still we need to do some more things to it, but what this UI is doing is it's basically taking what we're doing with the graphical user interface and it's converting it into SQL code, right? So it's whatever. Now we're going to fill out some of this stuff. So this is going to be ID. Then we're going to put like first name, last name. The other one was what, phone number or position, and then phone number. Right. So we can enter a name, and like it says in the lecture, don't put it like this. Don't do that. You want it to be like how I had it before, something like this. And then we can tell that it's a type of data. Now, before we do that, there is a link that I put in here to data types. It's like a list of data types. You don't really need to remember them all, and even if you don't remember any of them, you can always just reference them and know what what they are, whatever, when you need it. So, where are we at now? So yeah, we need to enter the data and the data types that we're gonna save. So the ID is gonna be an integer. These can be varchars. What a varchar is like just varying text. So like it's like char means characters and var means varying, different varying text. So it's like alphanumeric and special characters. Um, and we can restrict it to a certain length if we want to. If we don't, then there's a maximum that it could be, but that could depend on different things like how the data is being sent and so on. I can't remember what the exact number is. Like if you don't restrict it, I can't remember what the varchar limit is. But that's all that is, the type, the varchar. There's other ones like text, date, and so on. Um, you know, and then there's other things that we could use, like text, medium text, long text, and all it is basically how long, how long the text that entered could be. um, you know, and then different things that we could use for different use cases, obviously. Um, for our case with the varying text, like first name, how long, I don't know, like how long is the longest name? I don't know. But maybe you put like 50 characters or something. Position, maybe 40 characters. Um, phone number, I don't know. Because some other countries have longer phone numbers, some have shorter phone numbers. Some may, some people may write the phone number, like for example, like like this, you know. So one and then some number, uh, dash some number like this, and this is obviously not just numbers, right? So you wouldn't want to put like numeric here. You wouldn't want to restrict it to just numbers, um, because this is obviously varying text with special characters, right? So, you know, just take that into consideration. Um, so we could put our length of values in here. The ID, no, we don't want that null. We want that to be not null. And this is going to be primary. So the ID we want to be primary because this is going to be the ID, and we want it to, um, you know, be the primary key. So this is like the primary identifying key for all of this stuff here. Now, once that is done, we could put table comments if we wanted to. Like, I have this in the example, right? Whatever. You don't have to put any comments in there. And that's it. So we can either preview the SQL, which would give us this, and this is what the SQL code will look like. And we can save it. And once we save it, we will have our table structure. Okay, so let's just take a look here. This is our server. This is the database on the server, and this is a table on this database. We could have multiple tables in this database, but we just have this one in this case. So we have our table. Now let me just make sure we're on track. Okay, just to show you, well, we could take a look at it here. Um, Again, just keep in mind this is still the structure tab. So the structure tab, now that the table is created, it's going to show the structure, all the things that we created, the columns that we created, um, you know. Now we could go to the SQL tab, and in the SQL tab, we could actually write SQL queries in here and do different things, right? So now that we're in this table, if we were outside of the table, it wouldn't say this, right? But because we're in the table, it's saying select from the table that we created, personnel, where, well, let's say, you know, we wanted to do something with the first name, then we could do something like that. This basically attempts to help us write SQL queries. Um, we still don't have to do it here. We could do things with the user interface, which we're going to do. but this is what the SQL tab does. It allows you to write SQL queries right there in the UI. The next thing, and here's just an example of like what we could have wrote to create the table that we created. Sometimes this gets finicky. Different servers might complain about different things. I've had that happen before. But we could go to the Insert tab. We'll skip the Search tab for now. On the Insert tab, we could insert data into our table. Now, the way that this server is configured, it has 2 entries. Like we could do 2 entries at a time, right? So as you can see here, it says continue insertion with these 2 entries. If we wanted to only do 1, then we would just ignore the second one by making sure that this says ignore, so that this wouldn't get entered in, okay? But we could enter some stuff in here. We could say, put our name or whatever, and then put a second one. This is all just from the the example that I have. And that's it. We don't have to put anything else. We could, this is going to autofill. So this is going to become 1. This is going to become 2. So we press go. Press go. So 2 rows. So there's me. Do it here. Why is this not doing anything? Maybe it wants the values in here. Okay, it wanted me to manually enter the values in the IDs. So let's just put the values of the IDs in. When you push go, then it's going to spit out the SQL query. So you don't have to do anything now. This is showing you what it did. So it inserted into the personnel table ID, first name, last name, position, phone number, the following values. 1, the name, first name, last name, the position, the phone number, and the second entry, the ID, first name, last name, position, and the phone number. So now if we go back to the structure, or we could browse, the structure show us the table, browse will show us the stuff in the table. And because I pushed the save button, it did it twice. So now I can go in and delete, because you see there's a duplicate. There's this and this one. I'll just go and delete one of them. There. But there is the data that we just saved. So now we have our table and we have some data within the table. So there you go. So you got your data saved. Now we have to get that data. Now, just a side note, what we just did here was we manually entered the data into the database. We could do this dynamically, which is typically what would happen if you're using a content management system. You would be on some web interface, right? Like in the web browser, you would enter these things into a form, and the form would send that data to here and insert it into these columns and rows. Um, we can do that later. You don't need to do that for the assignment. Um, sort of more learning the opposite way, right? So here we can use some PHP to connect to the database. Now, if you do this in XAMPP, it ain't gonna work. You got to do this on your web hosting server, right? So let's do that. We'll go to your web hosting, and I'm gonna open this in a new tab just in case I need to refer to any of this. Well, actually, I might not do it on here because it consists of using passwords and stuff, but it logs me out. Log back in, and let's go to the file manager. I have one up here already running, but we'll do another one. So these are the files. I'll make a new one. Delete me.php. Okay, so this code here. This is on Blackboard, so you can just copy it. Okay, so I'll explain what's going on here. So up here, we're making variables, and we're going to pass the login credentials through these variables and then use those variables here to create a connection, right? So connection, and it's going to connect to the MySQL using these values in those variables that we created here. If the connection is successful, it'll tell us that in the web browser. If it's not successful, it will also tell us in the web browser. So like if I save this and I go to Professor Maximus FTG FTTP, but then let me get rid of this and go to delete me.php. See, it's just not working because it, because I didn't fill out the form, right? I didn't fill out where is it? I didn't fill out any of this stuff, right? So for you, I guess I could do it because it's a throwaway account. So let's look at this page here. And these are all the login credentials that we're going to need. So the database name is this, so new DB, and let me just move this tab over. Okay, so host, oh wait, no, that wasn't the host. I need this. This is the host. So I'll do it in order. Host, which is either this or it, again, an infinity free. It might be this, I don't know. I can't remember which one worked. So we'll try and see if it works. Try this one first. So host name, I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to put that in here. The username, we're going to put in there. So username. and there's a space here that would have made it not work. And the password, which is, where is it? There's a password. Copy that and paste it in here. Again, this is a throwaway account, so I don't really care if people see it and log in. I could care less. And then the database. So the database that we want is this new database. The new database. Here. We'll paste that in here. So let's save this and see if it works. Still doesn't work. Delete me.php. It might be I'm getting warning. This will throw an error. Feature PHP. Line 4, line 4. So let me see. Line 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's complaining about this line. Well, and these, I'm pretty sure it's just because something is wrong with the login credentials. Let's try this instead. This for the host name. And make sure I have this copied. So I'm going to change the host here to this. Save it, and hopefully this will work. No. Hold on, let me double check my syntax. It looks right. If I can't debug this, then I'll just show you the working version. But you may run into these problems, right, where you try to log in and it doesn't work because of the login credentials. And again, this is because there was two different things. So let's try this again. New database. Nope, not that one. Here. Actually, here, let me try this. So the same thing. I don't think did I have a syntax error? I don't know. Let's find out. Host name. We're gonna try this one again. Because remember, this host name was different than the one in the cPanel. So host name would be that one, and then the username will be this. So username, password, this. And then the database name, which is that new DB. And let me just double check that it's the same. EP IZ4 da 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 da. Yeah. So paste that in. Oh, I did have it. I did have a shoot. now that I'm looking again, I did have a damn typo. The closing brackets were missing before, and that's why the I was getting that error. It was like this. So that, I'm pretty sure, was the reason why I was throwing codes. I don't know if I constantly just doing error. Yeah. So when I resave this now, that error should go away. Oh wait, did I save it? I don't think I saved it. Okay, I did. I did save it. Okay, so let's see. There. Now it works. So again, just remember to pay attention to the details, because one missing. See, look, I'll show you again what I did wrong. Either all or one of these was missing. I'm pretty sure that was. Let me save it and see. Okay, well, now I'm getting a code, not all of the codes that I had, but I'm pretty sure it was a missing single quote. So maybe it wasn't, maybe it was more of them. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. But anyway, as you can see, it works now, and it throws us it returns us a successful connection. So with that being done, we could do the same thing with with this little bit of code 2, which I will show you. So if we take this and copy it and paste it into here, we can get rid of this. We don't need this anymore. Like, you could run them one by one, but you know, um, there's no real reason for you to do that. Like, you could run them like this, but again, there's, it's whatever. Or you could just delete this one. There's no need to keep it there. So we're basically going to do the exact same thing, just scaled up a little bit. So what is this doing? This is doing the same thing. It's going to create a bunch of variables and pass. Well, it's gonna take the login credentials and pass them into variables, using those variables to connect to the SQL database. Once it, well, if it fails, it'll just echo out that it failed and exit the program. But if it does not fail, then it will keep going. So once we keep going, we want to basically run a query, right? And we're going to run that query inside of a variable, right? So we want to, this here is SQL code, right? Select ID, first name, last name, position, so on and so forth, from which table? The one that we created, right? Well, in this case, it's the one that I created with the typo. But now that I changed it, I'll have to change it because, or no, well, it's this, the table in there, which, what did I name it again? Pretty sure I just named it personnel with the typo. Yeah, so it's this now. So same thing, just with that. And I guess we can uncomment this. And this will explain what's going on. So we're going to fetch the data. from the table in the DB. So we're going to run this query that fetches the data, and we're going to query the results, right? And we're going to take those results and echo them out. But we're going to echo them out in a loop, just because in this case we're passing them through list items, so that they don't, if we didn't do them in list items, like if you just return the data, it's just going to be a jumble of data, right? Like it'll be delimited by a comma, so it'll just be like a jumble of data, like number, comma, first name, comma, last name, comma, position, comma, blah, blah, blah. This is going to look a little bit cleaner. So it's the same thing, a little bit more complicated, but we're just echoing out the results, and through a loop, and echoing out the result and concatenating some list items, right? That's it. Or passing them through list items, however you want to word it, right? But that's it. So we put the same credentials here that we put before. So the same credentials over here. So host name, Infinity SQL 306. I believe that's the port that they specify in their server configuration. But host, username, same thing that we did before. Username, and make sure, damn it, make sure that I don't upset the double quotes. The last one used single quotes, this one's using double quotes, it doesn't matter. Password. And then the database name. New DB. Okay. So all that's there. These will be passed through here to make the connection work. And you gotta make sure that we're selecting from the right spelled table, and I'm gonna change that too. So login credentials pass through here to connect, selecting from the right table. Now if you named your table something else, you have to change this value here to whatever you named your table, which is going to be here, the table name. So you have to make sure that this matches where we're selecting from, right? So I'm going to save that, and I'm just going to copy this because whatever, we can just dump it into the web browser. You can just dump it into here, right? And then save it, and then check to see if the thing works. And it's not working. Oh, probably because I have something mismatched. The table name, something in here is probably named differently. So you have to make sure that these match as well. But that's basically how it works anyway. We could debug it quick or see if we can find the bug quick. If not, then again, I'll just show you the working example. Well, let me go in here. ID, first name, last name, position, phone number. Those look the same. ID, first name, first name, last name, position, phone number from personnel. Hold on a second. Maybe there's another typo here. And it might be something up here, but let me try this and see. And again, you might run into this issue. You got to debug it. There you go. It was that. Another typo here. And I have a rogue closing PHP tag. So I'll have to copy this and paste it again. There's the rogue tag there. So I'll just get rid of that there. Save it again. Refresh. And obviously now this is no longer a checker. It's you know, list, right? Whatever, people list. So now that it is no longer the checker, we can change that too. Save it there. But there's our data that we put in the database, right? And that's basically it. Now, of course, you're gonna have to pretty this up more, which obviously you're gonna do using more HTML structure and some CSS. But this is how you get the data basically from the database. So that is it. If you have any questions, you can email me and I'll answer them. But the rest of this class you can use, and the rest of the time you could use to work on your assignment. And now that you know how to do this, you should be able to finish the rest of it. So if you have any questions, just email me and I will get back to you. But that is it for today. So we'll see you next week.